back, everyone. Next on our agenda is a public hearing for Maryland Community Development Block. The purpose of this hearing is to hear public testimony concerning the matter. The procedure is as follows. We will first have staff introduce the matter, after which the hearing will be open for public comment and testimony. Each speaker will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to testify. After everyone who wishes to speak has done, the hearing will close. The commissioners may then discuss the issue and take any action that they deem appropriate, including adoption or rejection of the proposal, or they may take the issue under advisement and deliberate at a later date. Would you please introduce yourself and the matter?
Rachel Souders, Senior Grant Manager in the Office of Grant Management. We have 3 community development block grants to report on today. A quick background, the Maryland Community Development Block Grant Program is a federally funded program designed to assist units of local government with activities directed toward neighborhood revitalization, housing opportunities, economic development, and improved public facilities and services. The state of Maryland, specifically the Department of Housing and Community Development, has assumed the responsibility for the administration of the program from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The first block grant that we will report on today was one that was awarded in 2018 to the YMCA. I believe Maria Ribling, the CEO of the YMCA, is here today. Would you like to come forward? So we were awarded $51,455 in CDBG funds to be utilized by the Hagerstown YMCA to provide funding to continue an after-school program for children in Hancock. The program provides high-quality childcare to families with working parents, which is an essential service in rural areas like Hancock. Would you like to give an update on the program?
Yeah, sure. Good afternoon, everyone. So we started the program in Hancock, and particularly it was after the Boys and Girls Club had pulled out of Hancock, and there was going to be a void for after-school programming for children in the community. So the Y came in with the help of Susan Buchanan and the Grant Management Office. We did write a grant. The goal was that Boys and Girls Club realized that the model was not sustainable over time to provide childcare for children for $25 a week, and so that's what people were used to paying. So the goal behind the grant was to slowly but surely help families as they moved along to get to the point where they were able to afford more so what the cost of childcare would be. So with the help of the block grant, we were able to keep the costs lower the first year. The goal would be a little bit more the second year, and then once the grant funds were suspended, that we would be up to speed with what the cost of after-school care would be. Obviously, in the first year, one of the commissioners here was highly involved, Mr. Kiefer, in terms of just some communication pieces, and there was some pushback in the community with the Y coming in, but we worked hard and we were able to serve, I want to say it was about 18 or 19 families in the program. Second year come in, we really didn't increase the number a whole lot, but we also hit COVID. So whoops, at the end of the second school year, the schools were closed and the program stopped. And then we did ask for an extension of the funds to continue the program, especially after COVID, but then the schools did not open at all for almost the entire school year this past year. And as we opened back up, we did go ahead and offer the program, but we did not have a lot of families that took advantage of it, and so we didn't use the grant funds at all. We just operated a full cost program at the school, and we almost had the same number of students in the program. So we are going to continue this fall. So there is after school programming in Hancock now, in addition to the other child care centers that provide it. So that's kind of where we are now. We didn't expend all the funds. We didn't hit the number of people that we thought we would have in the program, not for not trying. I mean, we had many focus groups, many community meetings, many pounding the doors, many advertisements, many signs up in the community about the program, and we also went up with a summer program up in Hancock too to try to encourage it to be a year-round program. But now we're in there as a full pay after school program at the elementary school.
Thank you. Anything else?
I just would like to add that although we did not expend all of the grant funds and did not have as many students participate as anticipated, we did meet our national objectives, so we are still in compliance with the grant, and the DHCD is just going to recapture the funds that were not used.
Okay.
Thank you for coming, Maria.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, the next grant that I have to report on is for the ARC of Washington County. In 2019, the county was awarded $729,282.05 in funds for the subrecipient, the ARC of Washington County, to renovate 2 facilities serving adults with developmental disabilities in Hagerstown. This grant has funded the new HVAC system for these buildings, which are intended to be employment service centers. Is Troy here? Oh, there he is. Troy is the executive director of the ARC of Washington County. Would you like to provide an update?
Sure. Thanks for having me today. Project is most importantly on budget, little off of our time schedule due to COVID and supply constraints, but as it pertains to this grant regarding the HVAC, that system is about 90% installed and should be completed within the next 30 days. We are anticipating full project completion around beginning of October and moving back into our location mid to late October.
Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
bringing in Troy. Okay, the final CDBG grant that we are going to talk about is the one that was for the Horizon Goodwill Industries. In 2020, the county was awarded $100,000 in CDBG funds to be used by Horizon Goodwill in helping to support the Washington County COVID-19 homeless crisis response. This grant was used for the cost to operate and staff an emergency shelter, emergency hotel placement, and case management for the homeless population due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And Brooke Grossman, the Chief Missions Officer from Horizon Goodwill, is here to provide an update.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
So for the purposes of the Community Development Block Grant, we did provide 90 days of temporary shelter through August of 2020 through the very beginning of October, which also filled that gap between when cold weather shelter was closed, and we saw other organizations have to limit the number of individuals that were able to come in as a result of COVID-19. Beyond the closure of the shelter, which was the 90 days we had agreed to provide, we have been providing housing navigation services since that time. So I have a full-time navigator that has increased capacity to get folks on our local coordinated entry list. I'm sure you guys all know that's how we coordinate where homeless folks go in the shelter beds and the other homeless services that we have in the community, and then also being the bridge to understanding the complexities of all the different funds that are out there right now to help people either prevent homelessness or access rapid rehousing. So we have continued to provide that service and have secured funds beyond this grant to continue into FY22 as well, because the moratorium hasn't been lifted yet, so we know we're going to hear from a number of individuals that we haven't heard from to date that are going to face eviction in the next couple of months. And we've also secured another 20 adult beds and then 10 youth shelter beds in the county as well, and have a staff person dedicated to the Dagmar. So that's beyond this grant, but things that this one helped us parlay to address homelessness in Washington County.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rachel, does that conclude your 3 presentations?
It does, unless anybody
Yeah.
has any.
We will now open the public hearing for public comment. Anyone wishing to testify, please come forward, give us your name, address, and tell us what you would like to know. Anybody right there? Seeing none rushing the podium. Commissioners, do you have any questions? Hearing none, I believe I can go ahead and call the public hearing now closed. Is that appropriate?
You can close the hearing. There's no action required because this was informational. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir. Yep.
Thank you very much.
It's a condition of the grant.
Okay, we now have another public hearing. Application zoning text amendment RZ-21C01. Please come forward, introduce yourselves in the matter. The purpose of this hearing is to hear public testimony concerning the matter I just mentioned. The procedure is as follows. We will have staff introduce the matter, after which the hearing will be open for public comment and testimony. Each speaker will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to testify. After everyone who wishes to speak has done, the hearing will be closed. The commissioners may then discuss the issue and take any action they deem appropriate, including adoption or rejection of the proposal, or they may take the issue under advisement and deliberate at a later date. Would you please introduce yourself and the matter?
Good afternoon. I'm Travis Allen, Comprehensive Planner with the Department of Planning and Zoning. As stated, application has been made to amend Article 4.26 of the zoning ordinance, which pertains to the regulation of solar energy generating systems within priority preservation areas that also have an industrial mineral zoning designation on top of them, so a very specific set of circumstances. This proposed amendment would permit, as a special exception, the location of solar energy generating systems on lands that fall both within the PPA and inside an IM district. This is a fairly narrowly tailored text amendment, which we believe is largely specific to the properties in question subject to this rezoning, which is the Boonesboro Quarry on Benevola Church Road. These proposed amendments would not change any existing regulations for solar, PPAs, or mining in the county. Just to provide a brief bit of background on these particular properties and what has occurred in recent times with them. In 1999, these properties were given the industrial mineral zoning designation, so that was in place prior to the establishment of the county's priority preservation area in 2008. At that time, all but the main pit of the quarry was given the PPA designation. There's a number of different scenarios that may have led to the establishment of a PPA over an IM district, but we're looking at this as likely just simply an administrative oversight that, again, is largely specific to these properties and was likely due to the large number of properties that were involved in the establishment of the PPA. The present application is for a 16 to 17 acre community solar project that would feed back into the grid. Thus far, we have not received any agency or public comments either for or against this proposed application. I do need to inform you that the Washington County Planning Commission did recommend for denial of these proposed amendments. Their chief concerns in recommending denial were largely the loss of agricultural lands from the priority preservation area and the potential for solar expansion on other similarly situated agricultural lands. I did want to speak to those just briefly before turning it over to the applicant. We believe that the small acreage that would be potentially removed from the PPA would have little or no effect on the county's agricultural land preservation program. We would also state that, of course, by having the industrial mineral zoning designation on these properties, at some point it is largely guaranteed that they will be mined, so they will not remain in an agricultural use in perpetuity. And we would state, as is evident through aerial imagery, that these properties have already been affected to some extent by mining activities in terms of roads, residual mining materials, and other things along the periphery of the property. Again, we believe this is the only property in the county where these two things overlap, where you have an IM zoning district on top of a PPA, so we don't really see the scenario in which you would have similarly situated properties, which would also have the potential for solar development. And we'd also state that without this proposed amendment going through, the applicant would not be able to pursue a solar energy generating system on these properties. Because this is a solar system that is under 2 megawatts, it is specifically under county regulation. It doesn't come under the jurisdiction of the State Public Service Commission. And because our ordinance at this point specifically does not allow for the location of these systems within a priority preservation area, they would not be able to pursue a special exception under those current regulations. So for these and for other items mentioned within the staff report, staff does recommend for approval of these amendments.
Yeah, I'm Brian Quinlan with Calvert Energy, and we've put forward the text amendment. I've got a presentation that I was going to go through just to point out some additional background, maybe a little more detail, but staff hit on most of the things that we'll talk about as well. As staff mentioned, we think that it's a correction of conflicting land uses. It also provides uniformity under the land use article for Maryland zoning statute, and as mentioned, very small, very narrow focus of the land that's impacted by this change. And again, it makes no change to the requirements that a solar energy generating system must go through to be approved in the county. Next slide, please.
And just to let you know, what's up on that screen, we can also see right here.
Oh, okay.
So
All
when
right.
we're all looking this way, we can
All
see.
right. That's fine.
We can see your presentation.
No problem. So as mentioned, we think that there was an error in creating the original PPA designation with the mineral overlay as well. As mentioned, part of the site, or actually majority of the site, was already disturbed that was put into the PPA, and so it was already not being preserved. Staff has also kind of concluded that it was probably an error just because of the scale of putting together the PPAs. So the mineral overlay zone permits the use of mining, and it conflicts directly with the goal of the PPA, which is the permanent preservation of land. And the mineral overlay allows for mining, so the land would not be preserved in the long run. Also, this would align the county zoning text with the goals of the state. The state has put forward a desire to have solar actually on mined lands, and so this would make that consistent with the state goals. This was just a picture of, in 2005, aerial of the site, the mine, and this was before PPAs were designated, so you can see there's significant amount of disturbance already, including the main portion of the mine. And then the next slide shows the PPA overlay, and you can see that the mine pit was not included, but the balance of the land that was really already disturbed, most of it was included in that. And then the next slide shows the mineral overlay of the site there. The text amendment will also make the text consistent and uniform for the zoning that's been established. The main kind of essence of it is that the zoning regulations shall be uniform for each class or kind of development, and we feel that the way it's written, it creates two classes within the zone, and so this would correct that. And there's several cases, you can go to the next slide. Several cases under Maryland law that uphold this uniformity in zoning, and then I'll have Bill speak to it a little bit more detail after I'm done here. Next slide, please. So there's an insignificant or minimal impact on land preservation. As mentioned, the PPA was established to preserve land permanently. The mineral overlay allows for mining, so eventually the land will be mined. It will not be able to be preserved permanently in any event. Just some statistics that we looked at are some numbers. The other thing also is solar is considered a low intensity use in the zoning code. So there's about 40,000 acres of land designated PPA with the intention of permanently preserving 30,000. On this site, the only land that's affected by this text amendment, there's 82 acres of basically land at the site that have not been disturbed during the mining process, which is only about 0.2% of the overall land and falls well within the $10,000 or 10,000 acre kind of bandwidth that land might not go into actual preservation, even though it's designated. In the entire county, there's 30,390 acres of prime farmland. On this site, there's only 28 acres of farmland, and 7.5 is designated prime, so it's 0.092% of the total designated prime farmland in that county. The next slide just shows from the USDA Soil Conservation the soil designations on the sites that could be viewed as agricultural that are on that site right now. The next slide just shows a breakdown of those. And the next slide shows the other area on the site that would be affected by this text amendment that could be considered agriculture as well. You can go to the next slide. There you go. And then next slide is the table that corresponds to the breakdown of the soil classifications for that. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, there's no change to the SEGS requirements. So the solar energy generating system has to go through the same special exception process that would have to, no matter where it was located. So there's no impact on that at all. And that was the end of mine.
Jeff, can I ask a question before Bill tells us why we should do this? I know you're going to.
Why not?
So basically, I'm on the planning committee. Jill, was that unanimous that night? Do you remember?
4-1.
It was 4-1. Yeah, I didn't vote obviously that night. So basically, it's your land.
Well, it's Martin Marietta.
Well, okay, and that I think the biggest complaint I had heard was this disturbance of good soil land, but that's in your mining target anyway, isn't it? Or is it?
Correct. It's in the mineral overlay
Right.
for the county. It's also in the permit.
Okay, I just wanted to clear those couple things up, and there's, I think from an aerial, I don't think there was any, well, of course, this is a public hearing, we're gonna hear about it, but I couldn't see, would there be a disturbance, but let Bill talk and then he'll tell us.
Is that my cue?
Yes, indeed.
William C. Wantz, attorney here in Hagerstown for Calvert Energy LLC. Good afternoon, members of the commission. The proposed text would add a parenthetical provision to current section 4.26 of the Washington County zoning ordinance. This would provide for an exception dealing with property zoned both priority preservation area or having a priority preservation area overlay and zoned mineral overlay on the county zoning map. If you look at the chart, and I'll give you copies of this with a copy of my presentation at the end of the proceeding, you'll see that in the IM land use column, solar energy generating systems, or SEGs, are designated special exception. In Washington County, this would be in the absence of this amendment, this would be the only land zone with a mineral overlay in which a special exception is not available. So the applicant for the text amendment cannot apply for a special exception to be considered by the zoning board under a zoning ordinance to establish a solar farm as a transitional use on the Martin Marietta Benevola Quarry because this text amendment creates a legal block. The Planning Commission did have a hearing, and there was commentary in their deliberations as well. As Mr. Wagner was there, he well knows that the subject of the Planning Commission's recommendation became sort of partially diverted. It sounded more like a special exception hearing or an analysis of this particular project than the consideration of the merits of the text amendment. I've commented further on that in my written remarks. The purpose of this text amendment is to allow the applicant to apply for a special exception and to correct what staff and the planning director, Joe Baker, have characterized as a mapping area when the priority preservation area mapping designations were applied. There's another aspect of this that I'd like to touch on briefly, and I've also provided some legal authority and citations for this. When you do this, when you treat one IM zone property differently than all of the other IM zones mapped on the Washington County official zoning map, you run afoul of a provision that you may or may not have encountered before in zoning. That provision is the requirement of uniformity. It's statutory, and it's in the land use article of the Maryland Code at section 4.01, and that establishes the rule, the long-standing rule in Maryland, that zoning regulation shall be uniform for each class or kind of development throughout each district or zone. Meaning you can't create zones that include less than all of the uses in other lands similarly regulated. We have a case right out of Washington County on this called H. Manny Holtz. It was H. Manny Holtz 2. The first is often cited by the county attorney's office with regard to standing of the county commissioners to intervene. The second case actually decided that if you allow a particular zone to be applied, but you exclude from that zoning regulation applicable to the property a use that would otherwise be permitted, you're acting in a non-uniform manner. Because we have this unique situation of this one property that's treated disparately from all of the other IM overlay zones in Washington County, this provision is invoked. And I've provided some quotations from authorities that you can read at your leisure. I'd comment on what Commissioner Wagner indicated about the hearing. I think it was clear to some, but not all of the members of the Planning Commission present, that this is less than 20 acres, so it falls under Washington County's zoning jurisdiction, not under the Public Service Commission Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity, or CPCN process. They don't touch this. It's zoned traditionally under the county ordinance, and it requires a special exception. But there were some comments made at the Planning Commission that I think may have potentially misleaded others. There was an assumption by at least one member that this was an 86-acre Public Service Commission regulated project. That was later addressed by Joe Baker, but I think there may have been some minds made up at that time. It was disappointing that the hearing got a little off track. With regard to the county's agricultural policy, Washington County's agricultural preservation policy, as I've always understood it, is meant to avoid permanently displacing our best agricultural lands. This, on the other hand, is part of a transitional land use in the course of a long-term mining progression. Viewed in the longer term, solar energy production should be available as a transitional use, just like prop cover is a transitional use in mining in Washington County. The proposed text amendment would correct the mapping error, eliminate the non-uniformity provision, and it seems to me also, in summarizing, that the locations such as quarries actually serve as better locations than areas that are peripheral to residential development. You will find, I think, in looking at land use patterns around our county, that there are fewer homes around quarries such as the Benevola Quarry that have been active for quite a while. New development doesn't seem to occur in the proximity of those quarries. So these provide good locations that we're looking for in Washington County to put these solar generating facilities. Maintaining the quarry and having them have the ability for transitional uses, whether they're crop cover or solar farms, allows us to continue to enjoy the rich resources of dolomite, limestone, aggregates that are so essential to Washington County in highway construction and construction activities in general. So I would join the staff in recommending the adoption of this text amendment. for the purpose of removing the mapping error, avoiding the uniformity violation, and allowing this quarry, like others, to join with an organization of solar experts and put a 1.6 megawatt, allow them to present an application to the Board of Appeals for a 1.6 megawatt solar energy facility. And may I bring these forward?
Yeah.
Sure, certainly.
So we're gonna pass these out, right? Okay. Oh, okay. Are you? I got another question. If you're done, Bill, are you done?
Yes, sir.
Do we have, I guess, do we have anything like this in, I know the staff had said it basically was an error that we, from the beginning of how this was done. Do we have another, I can think of places it's possibly another situation where we've have solar energy generating and in this same situation, there's not another one in the county?
We're not aware of these two overlapping things where there's a PPA overlaying an IM district anywhere else in the county. That's why we feel like the circumstances are really specific to this amendment.
Okay.
We relied on Jill's study of that issue in some detail. They went through and analyzed each of the IM overlay designated properties in Washington County. This is it. This is the only one.
Okay.
Okay, let me just proceed with proper procedure here, pardon me. We went out in a hearing for public comment. Anyone wishing to testify, please come forward, give your name, address, and tell us what you'd like to know. Seeing no one in the audience coming forward, do the commissioners have any questions?
Oh, I'm sorry, I went out of turn there.
Sorry, it's been noted.
You reeled me back in.
It's been noted.
Yeah.
Commissioners, any other comments, questions?
I'm looking at something here, a letter from Jill Baker that says to recommend denial of the proposed text amendment.
She's reporting on behalf of the
That was a
planning
planning commission.
That's the transmittal letter on the commission's.
Any other questions?
If approved, will we install solar panels on?
We'll be applying for a special exception.
Right,
I'm sorry?
We'll be applying for a special exception,
To do that.
right.
dealing with some of these issues regarding agricultural displacement.
Looking into the future, are you thinking any special tax credits from the county or special tax favors that some projects have, some projects have not? Is that in the works?
No. No, it'd be-
Any other questions?
No.
One more, if I could ask, Joe or Travis, a similar location, maybe had a different zoning designation, was in the Pinesburg area for when that company sought the tax credit. I forget the name of that project, but you know the general area of what I'm talking about. How does that land? That's a mining operation. They were putting solar panels next to it. How does that differ from this project? Why does?
That project was actually not on lands that were zoned for IM.
Okay.
They were on private property that did not have that district. They were located adjacent to, so it's a different situation in terms of what zoning is in place for those projects.
Okay. So similar operation, but just a different zoning.
No, because it's a totally separate parcel. They put the solar panels on a completely separate parcel.
That was
from the
just
line
adjacent to.
operation.
Okay.
Correct.
Understood. Thank you.
Commissioners, does that conclude your questions? Hearing no more, I will now state that the public hearing is now concluded. Commissioner, any more comments? Hearing none, Commissioner Downey, we can have this back on for decision later, correct?
Yeah, I would recommend, since some written testimony was provided to you, that you take it under advisement and this matter be rescheduled for a later date for the commissioners to come to a consensus regarding which direction they wish to go. Obviously, if you wish to approve it, when you've reached that consensus, we'll prepare the final documents that effectuate the actual text amendment to the zoning ordinance.
Okay, Commissioner's okay with waiting for another date to bring it back?
And we can probably get this scheduled fairly quickly.
Please do. All right, thank you, gentlemen, everyone, appreciate you.
Mr. President, I just wanted to comment on the 120 item, transitional living for Nathan's Ridge. Apparently there was a miscommunication, and it may have been on our end, but there was a miscommunication with them, so we're in contact with them, and we'll reschedule that as quickly as we can.
Very good, thank you. Next up, we'll move forward with the discussion of the review approval process for local nonprofit contingency requests. Who will take the lead on that?
Since we discussed it the last time, I would just like to make the motion that a $1,000 limit be set as an up to amount for reimbursement to any nonprofit Washington County-based agency who makes a request for consideration of golfing fees. A receipt of fees must be provided to the CFO's office, and reimbursement will be made once it is determined the agency meets requirements.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Is there a second?
At one time, when we had discussed this, we were looking at
Okay,
using.
wait a minute, interrupt though. He put a motion, I would need a second to continue with, sorry to interrupt.
Nope. Second with
Okay, for discussion.
more discussion.
Thank you, Wayne, appreciate it.
I know at one time when we discussed this, we also looked at making this as a first come, first serve and allocating a certain amount of money in our pot for this. I guess in theory, that way 100 organizations, not that we have that many nonprofit golf tournaments,
500
but
of them maybe, yeah, I understand.
come forward, but are we capping this or?
Well, I think originally that was because we were looking at everybody getting 3,500, and so we were looking at that number as the goal. I think based on the number of nonprofits that are out there, I think we would still fall under that 20,000 that we had thought about originally. I mean, we can put that in there up to 20,000, but
Is that an addition to your motion then?
I mean, if
What do the other
Commissioner,
commissioners think about that?
How many golf tournaments do they have a year out there? Do you anticipate?
that are nonprofit,
Correct.
31's the current number.
how many of those are Washington County based? So around 18 to 20.
I don't expect you to answer this question. Or
Here's the-
have the answer. How many, you know how many golf tournaments to raise money are in Washington County at all the Beaver Creek, Black Rock? Do you have any idea on how many?
Yeah, I think when we presented before, we looked at, probably give me my.
Oh, I can hear you.
But for recording. I think off the top of my head, when we looked at that before, BlackRock had about 2/3 of the tournaments in the county, the second highest being Beaver Creek, followed by Fountainhead. I can't remember specific numbers, but in terms of percentages, we were by far the largest host for those.
Let me-
Go ahead.
Sorry, let me just add that if the manager at the golf course follows the limit set for nonprofits of that set fee that we set, if they follow that, we really won't be spending a whole $1,000. And a good example of that is one agency received a $5 discount per golfer. And so if you charge them for that fee, we would basically be only giving them $500. They would still win, they would still be winning, but they would only really be receiving $500. And that's the other side of this. I think that needs to be kept. That's a fair way of doing it across the board. The commissioner set that rate, and so it should be followed across the board for every nonprofit that goes out there to golf. And if they do that, the agencies coming into golf will still save more money, but it won't really cost us as much, if that makes sense.
You know, here's the part I don't understand. I was at the golf board advisory board meeting last night. There's some smart people there. Again, we've done something, made motions, passed something that now we're back trying to fix it when we have yet to listen to the board. They're coming up with a system. They're going to explore a system last night that's going to be a tier system for nonprofit. Here's what could happen, the way it's currently structured, even another way. When I was on that board 2.5 years ago, we went from 19,000 paid golfers to now we're doing 33,000 paid golfers. Correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, but I think I got my figures pretty straight. And the fear is, and I don't blame the nonprofits, I'd be rushing in there to get that money. The fear is there's no tee times left for where we make our money, you know, on the high dollar rounds, and we're driving our regular citizens away. So if it was me, I would let the board, the smart people on that board, and they're guided by Ryan, Andrew, Dave, Jamie, I'd let them come back to us and say, hey, here's our proposal. What do you think? Instead of us mucking it up like we did the first time. That's what I would do.
The people on the board came before us, and when they left here, they said, listen, you do what you need to do, but leave us out of it. That's what they said.
They're an advisory board. They're going to come back and advise us of what they think should be done. Correct, Andrew, or not?
I mean, I guess we're both kind of waiting to see what the other's going to do. So some of the discussion was if it's in this board's desire that they want to offer some program, I think there was a recognition that we need to adjust our model to reflect that in some way, because we are also running a business. We want it to be a win-win. So there was some of that. Who's going to kind of make the first move in terms of what needs to happen here?
I think this is a win-win. I mean, I don't know, like I said, I don't know who decides who gets that special discount that a couple of the agencies have received.
I'm gonna wait and want to hear from the advisory board, so if we vote like that, my vote is no today. I'd like to have a full report by the advisory board and consider them and then make a decision, but that's up to you. My vote will be no if we don't hear first from the advisory board.
I think we've heard from the advisory board.
Well, we just got a meeting right there. You just heard another proposal, so maybe we need to hear them a little bit louder.
They're working on a proposal.
Well, wait for that proposal. What's the rush?
I think we've heard from the advisory board, and I know we also, I believe, have another meeting scheduled with them. I know Sarah was to provide some financial information that I had asked for. You know, I don't think anything was mucked up. I think there was a request from a nonprofit.
We did something without knowing what we were doing.
Well, there was a request from a nonprofit. I think where we muck things up is we have a history so far of some nonprofits being supported unanimously. Children's Village was supported unanimously. Some nonprofits, like the Senior Center, was not supported unanimously by the commissioners. This is something that we can create a fair process that I think every nonprofit is treated the same. It's a reasonable amount. It's $1,000, and we've seen most of the golf tournament games cost the nonprofits in the $3,000 to $4,000 range. So we're not paying for the whole golf tournament. I know we've gone to many nonprofits over my tenure, nonprofits that come to us and ask for money, and we turn around and tell them, well, you need to fundraise more. You need to fundraise more. I think this creates an opportunity where we can encourage those nonprofits that do come to us and ask for money from time to time to also kick in, just like this board has asked them to to fundraise a little bit. And I know the Commission on Aging is getting ready to have their first golf tournament as a big fundraiser this year. Last year it was canceled because of COVID. They couldn't do it. But, I mean, it's enticing nonprofit organizations to look and find a new way to fundraise. At the end of the day, our enterprise fund, the golf course, benefits from it. Last I heard from the golf course board, they didn't want their revenues messed with. That's what their concern was. When they first addressed this, they didn't want their revenues messed with. This doesn't mess with their revenues. It keeps them whole. It prevents employees from arbitrarily giving a discounts here and there to the nonprofits that they want to. And it provides some uniformity that I think would benefit very well for this. I support this, and if the golf board has another recommendation, last they came to us, it was they didn't want their revenues messed with, and we were keeping them whole. It wasn't coming from their budget, and it's still not coming from their budget. If they have something else to present, I'd like to hear that.
They're doing a pretty good job out there. I don't know why we're messing with them. I let them come in here and advise us, then we can make educated decisions. When you go from 19,000 golfers to 33,000 golfers, you've done a pretty good job.
But how is it messing with them if
We've already messed
are
with them.
providing to nonprofits a portion of their fee? That's what we're doing.
We've already messed with them.
We're providing
Now
to
we're gonna mess with them
nonprofits a
again.
portion of their
I
fee is what
I
we're
have a
doing.
first and a second.
Can
on the-
I just
My
say
vote
this?
is no.
Can I just say this? Randy, you're just trying to make us look bad, is what you're doing.
No,
And that's not right.
That's
Wait a
out
minute.
of, that's out of
No,
order. Be
listen
nice.
to me.
Why don't you
Hear
be
me
ni-
out.
Be
Hear me
nice
out.
is what I'm
Okay,
asking.
hear me
Be
out.
nice. We're all disagreeing, but be nice.
Okay, hear me
Be
out.
nice. No one's throwing insults. Be
I
nice.
respect that board. You're talking about us like we don't respect that board.
I
And
just
that
want
is- That is, no, please, I'll let you
Okay.
speak.
I want to go to a
That's
couple
just
lines.
wrong. Now, last week when we talked about this, President Klein said that he would agree with it if we weren't including the Ag Center. So that's why I brought this back.
I didn't say I agree. I'd like to have a
You-
separate agreement. You're misquoting me. There you go again. All I want is a separate agreement in writing. I didn't say I supported this or not.
This is not-
I
this-
needed, you're wrong on that. I wanted
Okay.
this to be in writing so we had something to look at to vote on.
Second, let's move forward.
That's all. I have first and a second.
I just want
I wanna call-
educated votes. That's all I'm asking for. Educated votes. We don't seem to
I
have
think
that.
we need to hear from that advisory board, but we've had comments from everybody. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. 3-2.
I am glad to have this issue behind us.
Oh,
I
it'll-
think it is a win-win
All
for the
right,
golf course
now I ask
and
for a
the
motion to go
agents.
into closed session.
Motion to go into closed session.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.